Welcome to the Capital News. I'm your host, Alex Kreitis. Today is January 23rd, 2020. Thank you so much for joining me. Title of today's podcast is Trial Day Number 2. I know previous podcasts have been a little lengthier than normal, hitting the 40-45 minutes, so I'm going to do my best today to keep this one a little shorter today because it's going to be repetitive, because a lot of what took place today was repetitive as to what we heard on Tuesday with the procedural parliamentarian arguments, what we heard yesterday, and then obviously, again, a continuation of those same arguments with a little more flavor, a little bit more color, a little bit more detail, but the same set of facts, the same circumstances, the same documents, the same witnesses. So we're going to talk about that, but before I do want to talk about a little bit of the market performance, and then we'll move on with the impeachment. So what I want to focus on here is crude oil and natural gas, because we continue to see the commodity space getting hit. So we have crude oil, WTI, trading at $58.80 a barrel. Brent is at $62.30 a barrel. Natural gas is at $1.90 per million BTUs, British thermal units. $1.90. There's a glut, ladies and gentlemen. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And why is this happening? Because of easy money, cheap credit. All of these energy companies, especially on the margin, so those smaller, mid-sized companies who are out there, who are able to get loans that they otherwise would not be able to get, but for the fact that we are in a very, very easy money environment, they'd have been out of business, or they would have had to at least shut down, restructure. They'd have to do something. Now they can just keep going, tap a line of credit, get a levered loan, all this stuff. They got to keep paying those payments back, though, right? So what do they have to do? They have to produce. They're in the business of producing, supplying the market with something, so they have to produce. They have to supply the market with something because they need to make a buck so they can pay back the banker, or they can pay back the bondholder, the bondholders their coupon, whatever the case may be. So this is a problem. This is a huge problem. And it is now on the surface. And with a warmer winter thus far, and we're already almost in the month of February, so winter is almost over for all intents and purposes. It'll be here, but spring will be here before we know it. Now, that's not to say that there might not be a cold snap somewhere here or there. But there is so much natural gas, there is so much oil on the market, that it's going to keep these prices down for the foreseeable future. Now, how these companies, especially on the margin, are going to be able to sustain themselves is anybody's guess. But it's going to have to be by the grace of central bankers and easy money that keeps going out there, and it's got to go somewhere, and these guys are getting it. This has a lot of ramifications, because there is going to come a turning point where they're just not making money. They're just not making money. So all of it's going out to pay debt. Margins are getting squeezed because the price of the commodity that they're attempting to sell keeps going down. So the margins keep getting squeezed and squeezed and squeezed. And what are you going to have to do? You're going to have to start laying people off. And that's what we're starting to see. It's not just the unemployment rate that you have to look at. I know Thunder Thumbs, Donald Trump would love you to just focus on the unemployment rate, but you got to look at the participation rate. You got to look at continuing jobless claims. You have to look at the big, broader picture when it comes to unemployment, or employment for that matter. It's not just one metric. It's everything. I told you guys this. I tell you this all the time. The economy is a puzzle made up of thousands and thousands of pieces, and it's all interconnected. It's not just one piece that tells you what the picture is. It's a little bit of all of them. So you got to focus on everything. That's why we talk about everything here. That's why we go beneath the headlines here. Not just talking about, oh, well, unemployment's 3.5%. Everything must be rosy. Well, maybe, and maybe not. Maybe there's some stuff lurking just beneath the surface. Maybe it's now starting to creep above the surface. Yesterday we talked about some major investors, investment managers saying, well, cash is trash, and the business cycle is dead. I don't think it's dead. I don't think so at all. They're just kicking the can further down the road. They just got this thing on an ire lung. That's all this is. the bust will come. The bust will come. It always does. It's very scary what they're doing because it's a crime. It's a fraud. They're out of ammunition for all intents and purposes. That's why they got to juice it even more and more, diminishing marginal returns. We talk about this all the time. Warned you guys about this since the onset of this podcast back in February of last year. And then really with the start of the Capital Economics presentations. The one that comes to mind was in July before the Federal Reserve started to announce that they're going to start cutting interest rates. We said that central banks are trapped. They're trapped. And with it, right now, so is the economy. The economy's trapped because it's in this vicious cycle. It's a dog chasing its tail. What's going to happen? I mean, the dog catches it. What's it going to do with it? It's a never-ending cycle. More debt, more zombie companies, more debt, more zombie companies. Yeah, well, we might not technically be in a recession, but it's the debt just keeps accumulating and accumulating, hoping that one day there's going to be enough growth to sop it up. And who cares how low the interest rate is to service these debt payments? Because now you got to start looking at the totality of debt. The totality of the debt. Remember, there's more fragility in the system. Another capital economics presentation where we looked at interest rates and where the federal funds rate was and where the yield curve was prior, during, and after various recessions. And we said if this bubble is going to burst, it's going to take a lower interest rate to pop it because there's more fragility. Think of a balloon. The more air you pump into it, the bigger it gets, right? The thinner the skin of the balloon comes, the larger it gets. So it's more fragile now. It's ready to pop. It's ready to burst. So it takes less pressure from that pinprick, which would be an increase in interest rates or any type of tightening, to cause the bust, to cause the burst. Now you have some pretty talented people saying that business cycle is dead. It's not. It's not. I understand where they're coming from because all of these central bankers are just printing their currencies like they're going out of style because they are. But how is that going to make out for you when the value of the currency in your pocket continues to be devalued and devalued and devalued? Meanwhile, the deficits keep going up and up and up. So what's that mean? It's going to take more tax dollars to pay that down. Just the debt, just the interest on the debt. So they're stealing your purchasing power through inflation, through the printing of money. And then they're going to have to start taxing you more, too, to pay off the debt and the interest on the debt. It's a double whammy. And don't forget, the price of things is going up, too, which you know, even though they tell us there's no inflation. I don't know how much longer this is going to go on. All I know is the longer they kick this can down the road, the worse the correction will be. Because we're already talking about 40% of companies listed on U.S. exchanges that are unprofitable. They're unprofitable. And when you look at the amount of debt that is coming due, it's increasing. It's not decreasing. It's increasing over the next few years. So if they're not making money now and they're going to just have to start paying off bigger amounts of debt, how are they going to be profitable this year or next year or the year after? This is math. This is common sense. This is not the greatest economy ever in history of this country. It's not even close. And I ask you and I implore you to take the time to go on the Federal Reserve's website, FRED, F-R-E-D, Federal Reserve Economic Data out of the St. Louis Fed, and just type in those words that I asked and suggest that you do: construction, retail, manufacturing, industrial production, transports, the cash freight index, federal, state, and local receipts, tax receipts, corporate profits, jobless claims. And just look for yourself. Does that look like it's fantastic? And remember to look at the year-over-year change. The rate of change is what's important, not just the level of the data, but the rate of change is what you have to look at. Very easy to find. Very easy to manipulate that data that way. And that's what you have to pay attention to. And when you look at it, you don't have to be an economist, just common sense, just looking at it. And they have previous recessions shaded, so you know when was a recession, its duration, its severity. You say, oh, well, we only see this when we're close to a recession or in one. Yeah, and you're going to see that for pretty much all of those variables that I just rattled off. So how can this be the greatest economy ever if all of those variables are close to where we would be in a recession? Some of them are already recessionary. But if you want to continue to believe the White House, if you want to continue to believe Thunder Thumbs, that's your prerogative. Good luck. So that's the commodity space. It has me concerned. It has me concerned because a lot of those jobs are obviously well-paying jobs, and they're throughout the country, especially the Midwest and Pennsylvania, Ohio area now with the shale gas and all that stuff. So, I mean, it will be national. It will be national. So pay attention. Then we have the ECB. Obviously, the new president, Christine Lagarde, is in there. And everybody, well, you know, she's going to be a strong, independent, powerful woman. You know, go get her, girl. That type of thing. She's going to do what she wants. She's going to come in there. She's going to clean house. She's going to show them, you know, we got to get you guys off of the pacifier. No more easy money. No more negative interest rates, yada, yada, yada. She's going to come in, maybe make a deal, do some sort of debt forgiveness, something. No, that's not, no. It's not what she said today. No, the ECB, the European Central Bank, will remain accommodative. Oh, thank you. Thank you, strong, independent, powerful woman. You get them, girl. Very good. Just keep doing what they've been doing, right? Now, you're not surprised. At least you better not be. I'm not. Got to keep the presses going. Got to keep these stock markets juiced. Got to keep the German economy boosted. The French stock market boosted. The Italian market boosted. The Spanish market boosted. The UK market boosted. You can't let this stuff come down. We talked about some major sell-offs yesterday in regards to the coronavirus scare over in Asia with the Nikkei dropping seriously, the Shanghai Composite really dropping. But here in the U.S., no, relatively flat. We don't care about no damn pandemic, if that's what it turns out to be. We don't care. Now we got the Federal Reserve at our back. And the markets were down, but they can't stay down because that's not allowed to happen. There can be no price discovery. You're not allowed to sell anything. There can be no free market capitalism here in this country. Didn't you get the memo? Everything goes up. Up. Not because there's organic growth. There isn't organic growth. Corporate profits peaked in 2014. Look it up. In 2014, corporate profits peaked. So it's just the Federal Reserve pumping money. That's all it is. It's a joke. It's a scam. It's just a major wealth transfer from the lower echelon, middle echelon of the income bracket to the upper. That's all it is. It's just a huge Ponzi scheme, and they're finally getting caught. Central banks are even starting to get called out by the world's elite at Davos. Well, what do you think they're going to do? Well, I guess we're going to find out. Well, we know what the ECB is going to do. They're going to continue priming the press. Federal Reserve meets next week. Wonder what their conclusion is going to be. Wonder what journalist is going to have the audacity to ask them a tough question. Probably none of them. And if they do, Jay Powell, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, will just blow them off. He'll just dismiss them. Won't be taken seriously. Nobody's going to press. It'll be stupid questions because most of those people in that room asking those questions are stupid to begin with. I know because I've watched them on TV with their questions and with their analysis. They're there for infotainment. That's all it is. They're there for softballs. Because how dare anybody challenge the status quo? How dare anybody ask the question? And I really hope that they do. I hope I am pleasantly surprised by that press conference. I hope somebody asks them, well, you know, Chairman Powell, there's no inflation. You say, what about asset price inflation? I mean, you have to understand what's going on here. And all of these organizations, especially Bloomberg, CNBC, Fox Business, they all have nothing but data. They pay for it. They have it. They collect it. They analyze it. They got nothing but data. Somebody go down there, take a piece of paper, and show the man a graph. The correlation, if not the causation, of the increased liquidity and the performance of global stock markets. And say, connect these dots. Mr. Chairman, it's not that difficult. Will anybody have the audacity to do that? No, probably not. I hope they do. I hope I am pleasantly surprised, but I am not holding my breath. That's just one of them. And I don't even think that's a difficult question. That's a simple observation. That's common sense. And what's the end goal with that? What's the end game with that? Because Jay Powell opens up most of his press conferences with, "We work for the American people." That was one of my first letters that I posted, one of my first articles that I posted on the Capital News, asking the question, what Americans, Mr. Powell? Because it's not all of them. It's most definitely not all of them, because most Americans don't own financial assets. So who are you working for? Well, we know the answer to that, don't we? We most definitely do. Why don't they ask that question? What Americans are you talking about? Because there was just another study out, I think it was from Bankrate. Today it did a survey. Only 41% of Americans, 41%, have $1,000 saved up in the event of an emergency. 41%. That's it. What about the 59%? They obviously don't have it. You know, we see these surveys come out year after year, quarter after quarter, all the time. And they're not getting any better. Wouldn't you think they'd be getting better if we are in the midst of the greatest economy ever in the history of this country? They seem to be getting worse, not better. I'm not surprised by that, unfortunately, but that's what's taking place. So this game is going to continue to be played. There's other reports out there in regards to the coronavirus, in regards to China, that China has now quarantined about 10 cities. 10 cities. Remember, this allegedly originated in the city of Wuhan, which has 10 to 11 million people. So, if you just say, the size of these other cities, if they were the same size, you're talking about 100 million people who are under quarantine. Could you imagine how difficult that has to be? Like herding cats. 100 million people. That only represents less than 10% of that population. They got 1.4 billion, 1.3, 1.4 billion. That's like a drop in a bucket. United States, that would be a third of this country's population, or about that. That's huge. And you still have the WHO, the World Health Organization, still not quite pulling the trigger, saying that this is an international epidemic or something that is really cause for concern yet. Although, if you continue to monitor this, there's a little bit more cases here and there. There might be somebody in Texas they're still evaluating. Remember, there was a case that was confirmed up in Washington State. Now there was somebody in Texas. I don't know if that's been confirmed or denied yet, but that was something that was reported. So that's that. That's the news. We'll see what transpires. And don't forget, we do have the Chinese Lunar New Year. So that's taking place. So some of those markets will be closed. Now to trial day number 2. Again, I thought the Democrats were well prepared. I thought they laid out a convincing case, a convincing argument for why, how, and when Donald Trump abused his powers, which he clearly did. Given the evidence that we know today, if there's anything that can exonerate him, I think it's getting thinner and thinner by the day, although I'm still open to it. But you have to remember the second charge on this is obstruction of Congress. So the only way we can really prove the other way is if he sort of releases these documents. He hasn't released these documents. He has not really released these witnesses, but primarily the documents, which is why he is being charged with obstruction of Congress. Well, if you release them, then maybe the Republicans could say, well, he released them. Yeah, he did it now, but they are released, so at least we can drop that one, right? But if he does that, then there's documents. So what are those documents going to show? Again, my main concern is letting the truth be known and justice being served. That's all I'm asking for here. I'm asking for the whole truth. I'm asking for a trial. I'm asking for the process. And continue to flip through all the stations. And if I was flipping through Fox again, snooze fest. Snooze fest was one of the headlines on Sean Hannity this evening. Snooze fest. Meanwhile, the trial was still taking place. But Fox News doesn't want, I guess, their people, their viewers, to know what's actually going on. They just want them to stick with the propaganda that's coming out of the White House. They don't want their viewers, their audience, to watch the entirety of this process. Because it's a snooze fest. It's boring. You don't want to pay attention to this. It's boring. It's boring. It's boring. You don't want to pay attention to something that's boring, do you? You want to be like the cool kids. You want to watch reality TV. You want to listen to the propaganda. coming out of the White House, talking about distraction, talking about process, not the facts, because they can't argue the facts. Even the defense team, as of right now, has not defended them. Now, of course, they're going to get their time, and I hope they have an adequate defense. Distraction, process is not an adequate defense. It is a defense, but it's not adequate. It's not going to hold water against the Democrats, the House managers, their argument. Yes, it is repetitive. Yes, it is long. I'll give you that. But guess what? They're trying to reach two audiences right now. They're trying to reach the Senate, and they're trying to reach the public, the people. Because if the people can up the ante and put pressure underneath these senators who think they're just going to vote down party lines and the president's going to be acquitted, might make them think twice. Because if they start getting phone calls, if they start getting emails and letters, and people showing up at their office in Washington, D.C. or at their home district offices, and their staff reports back to them, we got a problem here. Well, what are they going to do? Are they going to put party ahead of country, or are they going to have to take their oath a little bit more seriously and really weigh the facts? Because we've gone over them, so I don't want to be overly repetitive here. But I have to give Adam Schiff credit again, unfortunately, for his closing argument, his closing remark. It's almost as if he was listening to the Capital News, because that is what is at the heart of this matter. Not that the president or any other president can't hold up aid if there's a legitimate reason for doing so. It's why it happened. Not that it was just done, but why was it done? And if the president cannot be indicted for a crime committed, because that is Justice Department precedent, and now if the defense for the president is an abuse of power is not an impeachable offense, and the president is later acquitted on this argument, then the president is a de facto king. That's it. He cannot be held accountable. There is no remedy. The only remedy that would happen to exist in this circumstance would be the election in November. That would be it. Otherwise, should Donald Trump become acquitted and reelected, there's no remedy for any crime he commits so long as he is president. And there is no remedy to impeach him if he should abuse his powers. Because that is what would have become a de facto rule. Because the Senate just passed the buck on. Yeah, he did it, but who cares? Who cares? That's what's at stake here. And again, even if Donald Trump is acquitted on this argument, gets reelected, and doesn't do anything dangerous, doesn't commit a crime, doesn't abuse his power, which I think would be very unlikely, but let's say for the sake of argument that he's a good boy, who's to say the next president is going to be a good boy or girl? Or the one after that, or the one after that, because now there's a very dangerous precedent that exists that they can abuse their power. It's very slowly, then all of a sudden. That's how this stuff tends to happen. It's that slow boil, right? That slow boil, that analogy with the frog. You're going to boil a frog. You want to put him in a nice pot of lukewarm water. You try throwing a frog into a boiling pot already, he's going to jump right out because of the adrenaline. But if you can make it nice and cozy for him, then just turn up the heat little by little. Before you know it, he's cooked. And that's exactly what's taking place here with the U.S. Constitution. So I have to give credit to Adam Schiff in his closing remarks, because they were very, very close to the argument that I was making yesterday. An argument that I've been making here for quite a while, but I was really trying to push it home yesterday in regards to the danger zone that we are in right now, with Congress potentially, we're done. Well, we're done with the power. We're done with the checks and balances. The president can do, whatever he wants. That's not a good precedent to start at all. It shreds the Constitution. A lot of this, if you're paying attention, on occasion, they'll mention the Federalist Papers. These are sort of the founding documents of the country. If you recall from your history classes, you had the Federalist Papers versus the Anti-Federalist Papers. And in a nutshell, what this is, at a high level, was some of the founding fathers believing that a small, powerful federal government was required. That is how government should exist. There should be a small, powerful federal centralized government, versus the anti-federalists who said, no, let this be a decentralized country, let this be a decentralized power, and give it to the states. And we'll just simply be united on the ideal of freedom and liberty and power to the individual. That was the argument. How far we have fallen, aren't we? We're talking about giving away free stuff because everything's free. It doesn't cost anything. How far we have come. So the Federalists won out the day because we had a small federal government. Far from it today, not even close to being small. Very powerful, a lot more than what the Founding Fathers would have intended, believe me when I tell you. But nevertheless, that was the argument. So they're citing some of these arguments in those papers to justify right now the Democrats' their argument for restraint, which is correct. It is correct. Where have they been for years on end? Same with the Republicans. Where have they been on years on end with this? Again, these politicians only bring out their pocket constitution when it suits their argument. When it doesn't, they shred it. They trample on it. But it's still amazing when those words are said, how it can resonate with people, how it can bring them back to earth, those who are saying it and those who are listening to it, and how it might make some people actually sit up in their chair and pay a little more attention. Because it might be boring, but there's a lot of righteousness in this process too. Might be a lot of learning in this process too. Because I've heard a lot of conspiracy theories on Fox News over the past few years. And early on, I'm going to tell you, I thought some of them might actually be coming true. Little by little. Remember all these people, John Solomon, Sarah Carter, Sean Hannity. A lot of news is going to break next week. Just stay tuned, stay tuned, stay tuned. Nothing happens, nothing happens, nothing happens, nothing happens. And now, with this investigation of the president, we're starting to learn who some of these sources probably were who was saying all this stuff's going to come out. Rudy Giuliani, Lev Parnas, Igor, Tensing, and DeGeneva. All these same faces that you would see on Fox. Now, there's still 10 months left to the election. Maybe something's going to drop. But so far it has not. And it's been worse for them. Not the other way around. I'm trying to give the president the benefit of the doubt. But you can't. You can't. He's lost all credibility. At least he has with me. And even in Schiff's closing arguments today, and of course they will have their third day tomorrow, but for the evening, Schiff's closing argument was like, you know that Donald Trump did this. You know that he did it. You can't even give him the benefit of the doubt. Oh, Donald Trump would never do something like this. Everybody knows that he would. Everybody in that chamber knows it. Everybody who's watching knows that Donald Trump would do what he has been accused of. The question is, are they going to find him guilty and have him removed? That's the question. Are they going to do it? Are they going to throw their hands up and say, well, we'll let the election take care of it? As if everybody's paying attention. Because they're not. Because it's boring. It's a snooze fest. It's not the UFC. It's not WWE. It's a snooze fest. It's boring. Our Constitution, a process laid out by our Constitution, is boring. Well, Sean Hannity, Mr. Conservative, aren't you trying to conserve the Constitution? Shouldn't you be standing up for the Constitution? This is the Constitution doing what it's designed to do. But it's a snooze fest. I wonder if the Clinton impeachment was a snooze fest to Sean Hannity and other conservatives. I highly doubt it. And I'm no Democrat. I'm a libertarian. I am sick and tired of the Republican Party. Sick and tired of them. This is their chance to stand up for the Constitution. They claim to be conservatives. That means you're conserving the founding documents. Well, there you go with the U.S. Constitution. Let's go. Stand up. Stand up and say enough is enough. This divisive rhetoric, these actions, this belief that you have unlimited power, that Article 2 gives the president the ability to do whatever he wants, because that's what he thinks, that's what he says. Well, if you acquit him on this, you're going to vindicate that thinking, that rationale that he has, that he can do whatever he wants. Justice Department's not going to come after me. There's a precedent. I'm exonerated. These guys acquitted me. I was charged with abuse of power, so I can do what I want. Like I said. I don't remember reading that in the Federalist Papers, or the Anti-Federalist Papers, or the Declaration of Independence, or the U.S. Constitution. In fact, it's quite the opposite. We don't want a king. We don't want a tyrant. And I'm not saying that's going to be Donald Trump, but it'll be a de facto, because the Congress is going to be abdicating their authority, their power, which they've been doing for years. This is their chance to get some of it back, which means we, the people, would get some of it back. Because who knows what Donald Trump will do with it, or the next president, or the one after that, or the one after that. That's why this has to be reined in. That's why this country is as divisive as it is. That's one of the reasons. Because the power has been taken away from them. It is in the hands of the collective few. The central bankers, the military-industrial complex. A president of the United States. It's supposed to be in the hands of the Congress. It's supposed to be in the hands of the people. That's where it's supposed to reside. This is basic. This should not be shocking anybody. It's as clear as day that Donald Trump abused his powers, and it's basically as clear as day that he obstructed Congress. And they're going to lay that case out tomorrow. Now, we'll see what the defense is. We'll see if they argue executive privilege, which really is a BS argument at the end of the day. It really is. Because you cannot claim executive privilege to cover up a crime or an abuse of power. If you think that the Founding Fathers were going to allow that entitlement to exist, so somebody in the executive branch, i.e. the president, commit a crime and then just claim executive privilege, you need your head examined. This stuff is very simple. The principles of this country are very simple. The problem is, people are not simple. People have to conflate everything. People are not tolerant of others. It's all freedom asks of anybody is to be tolerant. For the success of freedom, that's what you need. You need a moral people, which our Founding Fathers told us. And you need a tolerant people. Because you might not like what your neighbor's doing, and your neighbor might not like what you do either. Do you want your neighbor to make a law outlawing you from doing what you like to do, so long as you're not hurting anybody, and vice versa? That's how simple this is. Live your life, let me live mine, and leave me alone. That's all. That's all it is. That's all it takes. But everybody wants a piece. Everybody thinks they're smarter than the next person. Well, if we just do it this way, why can't you just get on board? Well, hey, try to convince me, but don't tax me. Don't force me to do it. You can try to convince me, but if I don't want to hear what you have to say, don't badger me either. This is a very simple concept. But for some reason, mankind cannot grasp it. That's all it is. That's trial day 2. We'll see what takes place tomorrow. And I will do my best to keep you posted. Stay diversified, stay vigilant, and stay with the Kapital News. I am Alex Karitis. Godspeed.